It has been a really challenging year, and I think when we started our year, we didn't envisage how involved medical students would get with the pension debate. And we think actually that's one of our successes, that we've managed to get medical students really passionate about an issue that most of us find really difficult to comprehend, because we're talking about what we're going to be getting financially in 40, perhaps 50 years' time. And that's, even talking about finances is quite, it's not something that we think about when we talk about being a doctor. But students are really passionate about the pensions debate, because it's actually our branch of practice, it's our group of the health professionals that are going to be most affected by the changes proposed by the government.
And I think what makes it worse is that our new medical students going into first year are now coming out with debt that is just unprecedented. We're sort of averaging that £70,000 of debt is what these new students or new doctors are going to end up with. So to then have the pensions contributions increasing so substantially is really hitting us hard.
So it's quite a significant decision these days to become a medical student.
Absolutely, and it's not just, with £9,000 that you're going to have to be paying for fees alone, that's nearly £10,000 a year, and we're talking about reaching £70,000 in debt at least. But now that oversubscription is considered the norm, students are going to have to think, okay, I'm going to be in a lot of debt, and I might not get a job at the end of it. And without being able to get a job, you don't get GMC registration if you don't complete your foundation year one. So what does a student do with 70 grand in debt, no job, and isn't able to locum and isn't able to really afford to kind of do further study in that year? So it is very challenging for medical students coming into the profession at the moment.
And as a result, you issued a general thank you to the other members for supporting you over pensions, which many people, I think, found quite funny but appreciative.
Well, I think we are very supportive to doctors. We don't have contracts, so we can't take industrial action. But doctors are fighting for their own pensions, but they're fighting for our pensions and for the future generations of doctors, medical students, and those who will come into the profession. So we are very thankful, and we will show our support as much as we possibly can.
I think a lot of people won't understand this issue of there not actually being enough jobs. Could you explain the foundation's issue for us?
Well, we've had a few years where we've had just under 100 people go onto the reserve list, so that they haven't been allocated a foundation year one job. But so far, it's always been that a few people drop out every year or decide to go into something else, so that those on the reserve list then do end up getting a foundation year one job. For foundation year one jobs are not just open to British students, they're also open to any European students who wish to apply and international students. And more students from abroad are wanting to work in the UK. It's a very attractive place to work. And so that's putting more pressure on British students, because we've got this increased competition.
So far we've been lucky, we haven't seen that happen. But I think in the next few years, or we think in the next few years, actually that might start to change, and the government really needs to get on top of this issue, because for every medical student that we train within the UK, that is hundreds of thousands of pounds of taxpayers' money actually, let alone the personal and financial interests that medical students put into it. But the taxpayers, if we don't get jobs and aren't able to get GMC registered, it's a complete waste of money.
Also, it is a vocational subject, so we're not able to really go into something else after medicine. So, you could do a medical degree and perhaps go into other areas, but it's definitely much more challenging. And any medical student or any student who applies to medical school has a dream of being a doctor, and to deny that dream seems unreasonable. Especially seems that the government, as Marion's pointed out, they spend about £250,000 training a student to work in the NHS. We are designed to be doctors in the NHS. So it's not just a loss for us personally and financially, it's actually a loss to the British public as a whole, because it's taxpayers' money who's investing in us to create really good doctors for our National Health Service. So that's where we should be going.
The effectiveness of training has been focused on a lot in the past few years, and of course it has all changed again. Are you finding on the ground that your training is as effective as it always was?
I think all of us at medical school, I assume you're talking about undergraduate training and education, I think one of the pressures on our education and training is actually perhaps this increasing number of students. And you do unfortunately see on the wards often perhaps too many medical students. We had a example given to us here in the ARM yesterday of 14 medical students on the one ward, which isn't fair to the patients by any means, and it's not fair to the medical students. So there are certainly pressures on our education and training, but I think from a personal level, I'm still very happy that I am training to be a doctor for the NHS.
And you have had a big success this year, and that is that you have won the right to be paid when you're shadowing. Can you explain that to us?
Absolutely. This is actually something that's been ongoing, the work of the Medical Students Committee and the Junior Doctors Committee for the last few years. And there have been pilots around the country showing actually that if medical graduates do this period of shadowing before becoming an F1 doctor, there are much lower levels of mistakes. The confidence of our newest doctors is much higher. I think really it's a much safer environment. So for the government to now give us 4 days of paid shadowing, meaning everyone except unfortunately those in Northern Ireland at this stage are paid for those 4 days, is just a fantastic success for us.
Elly and Marion, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.